they should also agree that God is eternal. If God is eternal, then there is the possibility that he has a better reason for coexisting with suffering or allowing suffering.
Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. And small minds discuss people. And my name is Kwesi Ado Sampo. Welcome to Life and Religion Issues.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Hit that subscribe button.
Hello viewers, you're very welcome to our maiden broadcast and podcast. Welcome to Life and Religion Issues. My name is Kwesi Ado Sampo. The question that we want to deal with today is, what is the origin of evil? If God, an intelligent being, a holy God, created the world, why is there a possibility that there is evil in this world? And practically, why is there pain and misery and anguish in our world? To answer this question, we have with us today Emmanuel Amisa, who is an elder of the Church of Pentecost, PIWC Kasua branch. He calls himself a student of the Holy Spirit with a mind of apologist and the heart of a missionary. Elder Amisa is the district youth leader and district executive member. He is also a business development manager at Regent University College of Science and Technology. Amisa also teaches Christian apologetics and church history at Logos Ministerial Institute, Koforidua, and Leadership Institute, Accra, and is a visiting lecturer at CMM College of Theology in the USA. As I said, this is a discourse on issues about life and how religion impinges on life. And I believe we all have questions, or we have all asked this question before, and with the help of our honorable gentleman, we are going to try to explore the theme of the origins of evil. So, Elder Amisa, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Daddy, for having me. It's a great honor and privilege being on such a wonderful show.
Thank you for coming. And so the question is, where comes evil? If God created the universe, what is the origin of evil?
Thank you so much once again. When you were introducing me, you mentioned that I will attempt to provide answers with the help of the Lord. And I also consider this platform to be a learning platform and an opportunity to learn from you, because you are my grandfather in ministry. But at the surface, simplistic level, the question might seem legitimate. That is at the surface, simplistic level. But if someone will pause and will want to reflect on the question, the possible assumptions underlining your question, that is where the reality is. But anyone who will minimize this question, I would say, has not understood the question in the first place. Because the question, even though it is presented grammatically, but it has a theological dimension, philosophical dimension, and what is more serious is the experiential dimension of the question. It is of concern to all worldviews or religions. For example, if you ask those into Eastern mystic or pantheistic worldview, they will explain the origin, the meaning, and even the significance of the subject we are discussing that gives rise or the meaning to their religion. For example, they will tell you that the origin of evil is from human beings, and as a result of our dealings or our actions that result in evil. That's why they have the karma system or the reincarnation in the Eastern. When you go to a worldview or religion like Islam, they will tell you that it is the will of Allah or it is the will of God. So therefore, anything that happened, it is God who has presented it. The atheist or the naturalistic worldview will think that because of the fact and the reality of evil, God does not even exist at all. So usually when the question is asked, they think it's only a Christian problem. But anyone who provides answers to existential questions of reality should be concerned about the question. So in a Christian mindset, there are two sources of evil. I'm now attempting your question, if I have your permission.
Sure, go ahead.
There are two sources of evil philosophically speaking. And I'm saying philosophically speaking because when we move a step further and analyze it biblically or theologically, there might be another possible source or cause of evil. Philosophically, there are two sources of evil. That's the natural evil and then the moral or the human evil, the source of evil. Natural evil is a situation whereby there is an occurrence, something that has happened like earthquake, famine, things that there's no direct involvement of human activity which results in human experience. That is what we call natural evil. The moral evil is where human beings embark on an activity that fights or that is against other human beings. For example, murder, rape, or any heinous crime in a society can be termed as human evil. Taking it a step further, looking at it from the biblical perspective, I would say that this is my understanding. Evil is not a thing or a being. Rather, evil is a cause, and suffering or pain, they are the effects of the cause. And taking it from the law of causality, from the field of philosophy, the law of causality states that every effect must have a cause. And the suffering, the pains, the challenges we see that we describe as evil, they are the manifestation or the effect of evil. So from the biblical perspective, the cause is our arch enemy, that is Satan. He is behind all those things. But once he is not a person of physical reality, the manifestation is what we see. So my attempt to answer your question on the source or the origin of evil is that one, philosophically, you have natural evil, which is natural occurrence without human involvement, or even if there's a human involvement, that is minimal. Two, the human source of evil, that is activities embarked on by human beings which result into suffering or pain, that is key. But from biblical perspective, taking it from the book of Genesis, specifically chapter 3, we see that the manifestation of evil, the practicality of evil, and then the result of evil can all be attributed to Satan. That is what I can say.
All right, thank you very much. So the source of evil is Satan. And God created Satan. And Satan is the source of evil. That's what we are saying.
Biblical perspective.
So God created this universe and he created Satan, originally Lucifer. He created him a perfect being.
Yes.
To be the choir master, to lead worship.
Exactly.
And then evil was found in the heart of Satan.
Good.
Where did that evil come from?
Thank you so much for this question. Like I rightly mentioned from the beginning, anyone who minimizes this topic we are discussing has not understood it. So I won't claim to know it all. Before I will attempt answering your question, I always have a way of escape. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29. The secret things belong to God, but that which he has revealed to us belongs to us and our grandchildren. But quoting scripture does not mean I will avoid your question. When God created Satan, as you rightly said, Lucifer, the Bible describes him as the anointed cherub or the choir master. God did not create evil in him. This is the solution St. Augustine, one of the
Church fathers,
the Biblical church fathers who contributed to Christian thought seriously. He said, evil is privation of sin. Evil is privation of good. What that means is that evil is not a thing, like I defined from the beginning, a thing to be created. Rather, it is the absence of good. So when God created Lucifer, God did not create evil to enter into his heart. Rather, he created him as a perfect being. He created him for a specific purpose. But Lucifer was not created like automobile or a robot, something that will be remoted. Lucifer had what it takes to make decisions and to act. That is the free will aspect of what God gave unto Lucifer. So it is Lucifer who decided purposefully to go against that which God has instructed him to do. So the absence of accepting and doing the good will of God is what resulted into evil. So evil is not a thing to be created. And this is the point I want my viewers to drive home. It is the privation of good. In other words, the absence of good. So for example, you have been given water to drink to give you life, and you deliberately pour poison in it and you take it. It is not the one who gave you the water who also made the poison available. Rather, it is your own volition to do something contrary to your originally designed purpose. That is my response to people who are of the view that it is God who created evil. Evil is not a thing or a being to be created. Rather, it is something that we do against goodness. That is what I can say.
So viewers, where we have come to, I believe that you have questions and you'll be allowed to ask questions at the right time. In order for you not to forget your question, you can write it down so that when the time comes, you can ask the questions. And viewers in YouTube and Facebook, if you have any question, you can type your questions and then we will respond to you. And we want to beg you, if you are a viewer on YouTube, to subscribe to this YouTube channel and also make sure that you hit the notification button so that anytime we do this, you will be notified. So what you are saying, Elder Amisa, in conclusion, is that evil is not a thing. Evil is the deprivation of good, as St. Augustine said. The way that I can make it simpler for us to understand is this. We have light. The absence of light is darkness. We can easily see the source of light. For example, in the daytime, we can see the sun and know that the sun is the source of light. However, nobody can point to the source of darkness. Darkness is the removal of light. The absence of light is darkness. So we don't have a substance called darkness. Darkness is the removal of light. That is what Elder is trying to explain. For example, there are particular words, if you don't even get a negative word, but you have the positive with another letter or two to show the negative. For example, we have righteousness and the opposite is unrighteousness. That means the negative is derived even from the good. What it implies is that if somebody is to say that because there is evil in the world, there is no God, then that person really has a problem. Because unless you know there is the good, you not even know there is the evil. And good comes from God. And so, evil is the deprivation or the absence of good. Is that not what you are telling me?
Thank you so much, Papa. That is exactly what I was saying. Thank you.
All right. Moving from philosophical thinking to practical, existential reality. What is the, we know the cause of suffering.
Yes.
Is evil that came through Satan.
Yes.
Why doesn't God do something?
Wonderful question. And thank you so much, Daddy. So like I said, the evil is the cause and the effect is the suffering. So they are just like two sides of the coin. But your question is saying, why doesn't God remove suffering? This is the old question asked by Epicurus 3 centuries before Christ. His question was that, is it that God is able but not willing to deal with suffering? If that is the case, then he is not all-powerful. Secondly, is it that he is willing but is not able? Then it means he is wicked or somebody that is mean, or you deliberately don't want to do anything about it. And when
I think you turn it around.
I turn it around.
Yeah.
Is it that he's willing and he's not able?
Then he's not all powerful.
Then he's not all powerful. Is it that he's
able
but he's not willing? Then he's wicked. He's not good or he's wicked. These are the questions. And if you read the Bible, particularly Acts chapter 17, you will see that these issues came up in the church and Apostle Paul responded to them. And philosophers and historians or antagonists of the Christian faith have built on these questions till our time. And this our time, they call it the Trilemma. The Trilemma is that if God is all powerful and is all loving, then why will he allow suffering? In other words, the problem of these people is that God, who is all powerful, God, who is all loving, cannot coexist with suffering or pain. In their thinking or in their mindset, if God, who is all loving, all powerful, can coexist with evil, then what that means that logically there is contradiction here. And that is why the atheists now have strong case against Christianity. If you look at the logical argument they present, it comes in two ways. First, if God is all powerful, all loving, and can coexist with suffering, that is contradiction. And the second aspect they provide is the evidential. The evidential problem of suffering is the reality of suffering. As we all sit here and all those viewing, no one can deny the reality or the existence of suffering. So they are looking at the evidence. No one can deny it. Once we cannot deny it, then it means either our concept about God is false or not. Let's look at some few assumptions underlining their understanding of the God you and I believe. If God is all powerful, if God is all loving, they should also agree or subscribe that God is also all wise or wise. 3, they should also agree that God is eternal. If God is eternal, then there is the possibility that he has a better reason for coexisting with suffering or allowing suffering. And this, the burden of proof does not necessarily lie in the hands of Christians. I think if you give me time, I will elaborate on this more before possibly you come in. Can I continue?
Go ahead.
And I want my viewers to do some work this evening because we are doing a bit of philosophy and logical reasoning. First point, God is all powerful. We have agreed. The atheists or our opponent have also agreed to that. 2, God is all loving. It is a Christian position. They have also subscribed to that. On the basis of these two arguments or statements, they now want to contradict or fight against the existence of God by the reality of evil. So first, God is all powerful. 2, God is all loving. 3, sin or evil, if you like, suffering is a reality. It also exists. So their question or their problem is that why is God not dealing with it, or how can God logically coexist with suffering? And my problem or my response to them is that first, if God is all powerful, God is all loving, then God is also all wise. If he is all wise, then there's the possibility that he has a reason for allowing evil. Another assumption underlying their position is that if God is all powerful, it does not necessarily mean that he will do anything. And the underlining word is anything. Anything simple means that if God is all powerful, he should not and he cannot do the logically impossible. The logically impossible here means that God cannot make square round. God cannot make a bachelor the married. God cannot violate certain principles or natural laws that he himself has instituted. We should understand that. So God, who is all powerful, does not mean that he will violate logic. 2, God, who is all powerful and all knowing, creating the world, permitting suffering to be part of this world, might have a reason. Therefore, God is all wise. Rabbi Zacharias made this statement when he was responding to the world which has the goodness of God at the same time suffering. He said when God had the option, or when God wanted to create the world, he had the first option. The first option is that he will not create anything at all. So the first world available to God was that God will not create anything at all. He will not create the world. He will not create human beings. Neither can we see pain, evil, or suffering. That is the option 1. The option 2 is that God will create a perfect world with only goodness, where human beings will not have free will. Therefore, they will become like robots. Because it is a uni-world or Unitarian world with only goodness, it means everything in will be good. And the human beings in will not have their independence or free will. Therefore, God has to put batteries in them to remote them and command them, control them to do what he wants them to do. That is the second word. Please follow me and let's listen. First word, nothing at all, so that he will not be accused of allowing certain things. Second word, he will create a world full of human beings with only goodness. And the goodness here means that the human beings will not have free will. Because they will not have free will, in order to satisfy the conditions of that world, God will have to remotely control them to do what he wants them to do. And the third option available to God is to create a world like ours, where human beings will have what we call free will or independent will, where love is also possible. Don't forget, the first word, love, is not possible. The second word, where human beings do not have their independent will, love is also not possible. Sociologically speaking, love is the supreme ethic. And everybody wants to feel love, and everybody wants to be loved. And love is also possible in the third world, where we find ourselves, where there is independent will, where there is free will, love, and then 3, where evil and good coexist. So if you are watching, or you are viewing, or you are here, and you are presented with these 3 worlds, which one would you advise God to create? And your answer, your guess will be as good as mine, that the only world that God had the option, and it is his perfect will to create, is the world that evil and good exist. The question that now comes is that this all-wise God, why will he allow suffering in this world? And if you study the Bible provides answers to these existential questions of reality. Answer number 1. God's reason for permitting or allowing suffering on this earth is, one, the chief purpose of humanity on this earth is not happiness, rather to obtain the knowledge of God. Our reason for coming to this earth that we find ourselves is not happiness, as people always see it. That is why sometimes I do have challenge with the health, wealth gospel. The health, wealth gospel, when we present it to the people, they think that that is all that Christianity is about. That is part of Christianity, but pain, suffering, and challenges should also be part of Christianity. So the chief purpose of God's primary or ultimate goal for humanity is not happiness, rather the knowledge of God. And if I'm to elaborate on this historically, with evidence and statistics, it will marvel you that throughout history, knowledge about God has always been preceded by persecution or suffering. Go to the first century of Christian or the Common Era. When the church was being persecuted for following Christ, that is when the church was growing in numbers. Go to the medieval period, it happens same. As we speak today, the fastest growing churches are in serious countries where persecution is going on there.
Apostle, that reminds me of what Tertullian said.
Okay.
Tertullian said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the gospel.
Sure.
Anytime there is ease, excuse my French, there is foolishness among Christians. Anytime there is persecution, people who love, those who are just by the side, they fall off. But those who are serious and know their God, that is even when people really serve God and love God. So Tertullian said, the seed of the gospel is what? The blood of the martyrs. Okay,
Thank
continue.
you so much, Papa. I thought maybe you wanted to ask another person. Can I continue?
Continue.
So, logically, one, it is possible by that the all-wise, all-loving, and all-powerful God can coexist with suffering. And if you want to go into the logics of it, we can demonstrate that those who are making that case that it is impossible for God to exist, they will be found wanting logically. But theologically, God has a reason for allowing his goodness to exist in his world at the same time suffering. And the point one is what we have just demonstrated, and Papa has made it very clear that man's ultimate existence is not about temporal happiness, rather it is about the knowledge of God. And we have demonstrated that somebody should look at Operation World Statistics. Operation World Statistics. You realize, or if you go to Joshua Project also have fantastic statistics for missiologists and missionaries to study what is going on in the world. Go to China now. When it came to point in time that they were persecuting Christians, killing them, burning Bibles, making sure that Christianity dies, that is when the knowledge of God increased. Anyone who has studied about pandemics or any global catastrophe, you realize that anytime God purposefully permits those incidents to come, it brings revival, or people come back to the knowledge of God. So one, God can. Logically, it is possible for God to coexist with suffering. It does not lead to contradiction. Theologically, God will allow that to happen to increase the knowledge about himself. Secondly, man is deliberately, purposefully, has decided or chosen to rebel against the plan of God. And this is also biblically proven from Genesis chapter 3 throughout the Bible. You can see that man has fallen. And because we have fallen from the grace of God, and man is devising every means possible to interpret reality from our own perspective. When Adam and Eve sinned, instead of them to go to the source for their solution, they sewed fig trees. It stands for false hope. Fig trees to cover their nakedness. So man from the Garden of Eden till now has always tried or attempted to provide answers to existential questions of reality only from the physical world without consideration to the metaphysical dimension. So there is the need for God to allow these things or suffering to be available or to be a reality so that man's rebellious nature, we will receive what is due us. Like what Irenaeus said. Irenaeus said that sin or suffering is the result of sin or punishment. That's 180 AD Christian church father. That's what he also said. So
can I stop you here? What I'm hearing, viewers, is that sin brings suffering. And it is easy to misinterpret that. Why am I saying this? Because if sin brings suffering generally, but if individually, particularly, does it mean that everybody who suffers is because of that person's sin? Because I believe that is what the so-called friends of Job were trying to tell Job, that confess your sin and you'll be well. That means that it is possible for us to accuse people who are already suffering, going through difficulty and pain, and accuse them that it is their sin that is causing them. So I want you to elaborate on that.
Thank you so much, Papa. Like the case you cited of Job, John chapter 9, even the disciples of Jesus Christ also had the same problem. But Jesus' response in John chapter 9 is my key hermeneutic in responding to some of these issues. Yes, even though I'm making a case that sin can and always, most often, scripturally speaking, result into suffering, but not all sufferings or not all problems that people are going through are as a result of sin. For example, in Job's scenario, that wasn't the position. In John chapter 9, the blind man, that wasn't the position. So Romans chapter 8, verse 8 was to lead to my third point. Sometimes God will also allow suffering to come to reveal his glory, to manifest his glory. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 through 18. Paul also said that having known this, we go through the pains and the suffering momentarily so that God will manifest his glory. So in Romans chapter 8, verse 18, Apostle Paul also said that, for I consider that the present suffering is not worthy to be compared to the glory that God will reveal to us. And the 19th verse says that, for the creation is subject to vanity or suffering, not willingly, by reason of he who subjected them, in hope of revealing his children. Then from the 28th through 35 to 38, that is where Apostle Paul said, who then can separate us from the love of Christ? Tribulation, famine, persecution, all these things are part of God's grand scheme or plan to help us to know that, one, this earth is not our home. We always ought to interpret issues on this earth from the eternal dimension. So yes, the point is that most of the sins or the suffering we face here, when you look at it from the moral dimension or source of evil or suffering, then it's true. Most people are going through suffering because of their sin, but a good number of people are also going through suffering for God's own purpose to be revealed.
Hi, I'm Bryson. Hey, I'm Noah. Please subscribe now. Please subscribe now.
They should also agree that God is eternal. If God is eternal, then there is the possibility that he has a better reason for coexisting with suffering or allowing suffering.
Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. And my name is Kwesi Ado Sampo. Welcome to Life and Religion Issues.